Now, we are pleased to introduce our first panel of the day, entitled Elevating Biotechnology as a National Priority. Please welcome our panelists, Dr. Michelle Rozo, Vice Chair of the NSCEB, Dr. Drew Endy, Associate Professor of Bioengineering at Stanford University, and Dr. Patrick Finn, President and Chief Operating Officer at Twist Bioscience. Alison Snyder, Managing Editor at Axios, will moderate the conversation.
All right, I'm back. I got some steps in, not many. So our next panel is going to home in on sort of the first set of recommendations from the Commission, which centers on prioritizing biotech at the national level. To do that, we have representatives from industry, academia, and government, the sort of main pillars of the innovation ecosystem. Right next to me is Michelle Rozo, Vice Chair, you've seen and heard from this morning already. Drew Endy is the Science and Senior Fellow and Martin Family Fellow in Undergraduate Education for Bioengineering at the Hoover Institution at Stanford. And Patrick Finn is the Chief Operating Officer at Twist Bioscience. So I think maybe the thing I want to start with is, what does it mean for biotech to be a national priority in practice? And let me start at the government level. What does that look like? How do you know you're there?
Yes, thank you. It's a great question, and it's something why it's Chapter 1, Pillar 1 in our report is making this a strategic priority for the federal government is because it has not been elevated to the level of a national priority in the way that it needs to thus far. And we've seen, as we've talked about earlier today, that China has made biotechnology a strategic priority and has done so for the last 20 years. So functionally changing that for the US government means senior leadership at the White House and at departments and agencies who can elevate this as a national priority. And so we took an important first step yesterday with the introduction of the National Biotechnology Initiative Act of 2025, led by Senator Todd Young, as well as Senator Alex Padilla in the Senate, and then Representative Bison and Representative Khanna in the House. And so you can call your senators S1387 and ask them to co-sponsor this legislation that would set in motion this whole of government approach to advancing biotechnology. Critically, it elevates biotech to a national level by establishing a National Biotechnology Coordination Office, in EOP, a principal advisor to the President for Biotechnology, as well as an interagency committee to coordinate across the government and designating clear roles and responsibilities, as well as being able to coordinate across regulatory agencies, EPA, FDA, and USDA, to streamline pathways to market and reduce regulatory burden. So from the government and from the steps that we can take from the Commission, we see this as an important first step towards creating the architecture across the federal government to really be able to put these actions into motion.
Patrick, Drew, what does it mean, I guess, in practice for you all? If it becomes a national priority, what does that look like? What does that potentially allow you to do? What does it sort of unlock, as it were?
Drew, I'll follow your lead.
Yeah, let's just start with data. What's the only thing that took out a US carrier recently? It's an RNA virus. If we've got a bioeconomy that's 4 trillion globally and we're clocking at about 1 of 4 trillion, but we expect by 2050 it'll be about 30 trillion, how much of that do we need? There's only 9,032 days till 2050, right? Every day matters. And so what these data points bring to me is biology is a strategic domain. And we can't simply let it happen to us. We have to be very smart as we can be, to make sure that we're securing biology and we're opening up all the possibilities of biology soon enough to matter. And it's a really critical transition we're going through with the Commission and its report, and all of us being together, working together to transition from letting biology happen to us and being unchoreographed towards a common effort to unlock biology as a general purpose technology and to lead the world into a flourishing biotechnology future. And even if I'm coming from academia, it's an all hands approach. It's all of government. And so that's what it means and what it feels like.
Good.
From an industry standpoint, maybe just 30 seconds to introduce Twist Bioscience, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
We're a company that was founded 13 years ago, and we've been 10 years commercial. The secret of my youthful appearance is trying to commercialize new technology. We've built incredible DNA synthesis capacity using a combination of a bunch of different disciplines in chemistry, DNA synthesis, bioinformatics, engineering. This allowed us to make now up to approximately 16 million oligonucleotides per day, or 16 million building blocks for the community to use worldwide. It's unprecedented scale, and we're incredibly excited about what we're doing to enable and support the community worldwide. I think building out this ecosystem, obviously it's going to be very, very good for business. We're here to enable, and for us, quite frankly, we've built the infrastructure to support the interest that I think you're going to drive. I'm a huge fan of coordination, responsibility, and accountability lining up. It works well in corporate America. I'm very, very sure it will work from an administrative standpoint. So we're here to serve, and what we should see is the diversity of DNA and molecules that we're making increase and enable the community onto the next greatest innovations and inventions. So I'm very excited about what we're doing here.
I want to come back to the diversity question, but the U.S. has led a lot of the sort of underlying science here, right? But how about in transitioning that to economic impact? Like, where does the bioeconomy stand today, and where does the U.S. rank? Is there even a clear global leader?
I think it's an interesting time. Again, we're a relatively new commercial organization. We serve companies worldwide. I think the U.S. has a strong position. I think that if I look across the regions, again, from a commercial look, I think historically, taking China as an example, it's maybe seen as a low-quality, low-cost supplier. I think there's a few crystallizing moments that have happened recently. One of the most recent healthcare conferences I was at, I think it was some work by, please excuse me if I get the name wrong, I think it's Axios, who's done some beautiful work developing a PD-1 inhibitor that actually outperforms Keytruda. Which is an incredibly important molecule, for patient outcome. And so I think, quite frankly, the balance is changing. I don't think we should be seeing China as, the low-cost provider here. I do think you're starting to see an innovative edge pick up. And, that they've got strong infrastructure, strong capabilities in the space that we serve, and I think you're starting to see those results play out now. So I do see a transition happening.
Why as a company would you, if it already exists in China, why would you invest in it being developed in the U.S.? What's the pitch?
Do it better at scale.
Do better at scale?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. We have unprecedented scale at Twist. And we believe we can enable a broader community onto the next great innovations. We're not done. The molecules that are being created are good, but there's room for much more improvement.
Michelle, you want to
I
add
was going to say that I think there's national security reasons to make products here at home, supply chain resiliency, right? We've talked earlier today about how we could remake global supply chains with biotechnology and biomanufacturing, and the ability to do that here at home. Again, there are strategic reasons to do that. And so we lay out a series of recommendations throughout the whole report that enable the private sector to bring its full weight to bear on all of the diverse applications of biotechnology. But that starts with the federal government being able to coordinate, amongst itself and prioritize this technology as a strategic domain. And I just want to stop because I'm looking across the room and see so many familiar faces across departments and agencies who work on biotechnology. And so hi to all of you. It's really, remarkable to see so many friends and colleagues here who have worked tirelessly for biotechnology, for the decades, right, to get to where we are today. Really appreciate your service, your leadership. And I can say from, working alongside you when I was in the government that while there are immense talented individuals working on biotechnology, scientists, program managers in the labs, elevating that and having senior leaders, one, understand what biology is, why it's important, and two, advocating for that at a national level has been hard to do across departments and agencies. And so the recommendations that we lay out, the legislation that our congressional leaders introduced yesterday is the first step to creating that senior leadership at the White House and at departments and agencies to advocate for all of the great work, to consolidate, to coordinate, and ensure that we're driving forward this critical domain in support of all of the diverse applications across America.
What are the, major strategic steps that the federal government should take in each of your views, from each of your point of views, to prioritize biotech? And maybe what's the first critical government step? I mean,
So we lay out, in the report, what we see is they are the critical steps. So we took a very targeted, strategic, focused approach to define, the $15 billion over 5 years in ways only the government can take, the steps only the government can take to buy down some of the risk, to ensure that the reward is there for the private sector, again, across all the applications of biotech that we see as priorities, which again are all of them. And so the areas that we lay out in the report, everything from grand research challenges to pre-commercial infrastructure to market commitments to regulatory aspects, which the Senator and Ponch spoke about, just before us, are all critical steps that we must take in order to unlock this technology.
Drew, what about from your perspective?
Yeah, let me highlight two puzzles. The first is, in a way that's a little bit different than AI, quantum, fusion, actually sometimes a lot different, the applications of biology are all over. It's a hyper-diverse space. What's heartening to me, the group that's brought here today is representing all the different verticals and even more that we can't yet imagine of what biotechnology does. That makes a very tricky puzzle, which is how do you get the foundations right? Because when each of us comes to Washington or is working in Washington, we're typically charged with our portfolio, and we've got to get this one thing right. But underneath it all is the common foundation of biotechnology. And one of the great things about the Commission's report and just the Commission's existence and success is it's bringing us together in a new way, such that we have a chance of creating a common community that gets the foundations upon which we build biotechnology together. And it's always been hard to do in biotech. It's extra hard to do in biotech. And so it's a type of meta role in common. It leverages the superpower of the government, which brings us together. So that's one thing. A second challenge we've got is there's never been a domain of technology where the applications are so compelling. Biotech has the most compelling applications, starting with health and medicine and curing horrible diseases and securing us and cleaning up environments. You just see all the applications are so pressing. And because of that, there's a challenge in terms of appropriations, where it's much easier to get the appropriations if you're working on those immediate challenges, because it's easier to explain to a constituent or a member of Congress that we're curing this disease right now. This is backwards compared to other emerging technologies. If you look at the history of electronics and networking and others, the public treasure went into the foundations of the science and engineering, made that work really well, and gave it away, frankly, so that the private sector could light it up. All right, that's what we did with strategic computing. That's what we did with networking and so on. But because of the urgency, it's an irony here and a paradox, because of the urgency of biotech, we're a little bit out of order. So when I look at the Commission's recommendations, the things I love the most are the foundations. How do we get biometrology right and the critical role that NIST has to play in commerce? How do we get routinization of cellular scale engineering and the mysteries of life that still exist at the foundational level? When we have the director of NSF, Ponch, saying that our best and brightest students are laboring for 6+ years to earn biology PhDs because the toolkit for workflow is grossly immature. It's like punch card programming. Like, how could that be? Yeah. Right? So bringing people together, bringing all of us together such that when any of us are advancing our one thing, maybe we spend 20% time for the common biotech good, the common foundations. That, I think, is a priority for all of us as a community. And then the second, how can we take the precious public treasure and deploy it to get the foundations right so we have very high leverage returns in a tricky budget environment?
Do you want to add to that, Patrick? Yeah,
I don't have to explain to this room, the bioeconomy is underpinned by synthetic DNA. The molecule itself it's self-documenting. The value of the molecule is in the sequence. That is crystal clear, and I think that from a commercial standpoint, I think some good work that's been done so far is shining a light on supply chain. We compete with companies that may trade in the American stock market or may present like American companies, but in actual fact are manufacturing with manual labor in China. And so I think that light that you put onto supply chain is good. We can feel it in the market. We compete in that environment every single day. And I think the brighter the light you can shine and the more you can turn the screws on creating the right environment to think about that supply chain, would be very beneficial for US-based companies.
So much of the conversation tends to like circle around pharmaceuticals, right? I mean, I think that and those are obviously tied up in a lot of different supply chain issues, tariffs, things like that. But seems to be a whole other ecosystem of bioindustrial work. Can each of you talk a little bit about that and like why what the opportunity is there, I guess, and what the challenges are there?
Yeah. I love this question. I think it's important to tell this story, and I tried a number of different ways to tell it, but let me see which one to roll out for this audience that knows this so well. So I think, from our authorizing committee is the Armed Services Committee. We were created through that. And so I go back to a DARPA program, the Living Foundries program, and 1,000 Molecules. Again, seeing some familiar faces in the audience who were critical in that effort, which really spearheaded and launched and supported a lot of burgeoning industry and academia to remake over 1,000 molecules that the Defense Department relies on every day using biomanufacturing instead. So these could be drop-in replacements for things that the department has a trouble sourcing, sole source or foreign source. You can remake that supply chain using biomanufacturing here in the United States. And in some areas, they also outperform conventional, non-biologically produced products. Really exciting for the Department of Defense to be able to have new capabilities, new materials built on biology. And so this for me, and I think for a lot of the work that we're doing on the commission, is to make sure that we can get that really exciting advances, continue to move those forward, scale those up and products like those, and get those into the hands of the warfighter to make their job more secure, to make them more secure where they need to serve all across the world.
Patrick, what do you see in sort of that broader spectrum of bioindustrial?
Yeah, so we're the enabler, we're the Robin to your Batman across the healthcare segment, whether it's drug discovery, development, the industrial biotech segment is incredible. There's a few projects that have come out just recently that I'm quite an advocate of. I'm a failed chemist and enzymologist, so seeing the development of novel enzymes with improved features, whether it's the next great molecule being synthesized for healthcare industrial applications has been fantastic. Converting some of the more unpleasant gases in the environment into useful products through modified microbes has been really interesting. One of my personal favorites is just, we have some of our customers come and present to Twist every month, I think it was taking like dandelion and having it modified to produce rubber. It was absolutely fantastic, and a very, very scalable chemistry that looks like it has real potential to go beyond just an idea and get in and again, disrupt the supply chain. So there's wonderful examples across the board, trying to stay away from the healthcare examples because it's too easy to go down that rabbit hole, but the diversity of applications is truly enormous.
You've each touched, I think, a little bit on the infrastructure that's needed. Maybe, Drew, can you talk about what needs to be a national priority in that regard, in terms of the infrastructure for this, whether it be data or otherwise?
I think about infrastructure in terms of education, research, entrepreneurship, manufacturing, so full stack. We need infrastructure is needed in all areas, right? So how do you make biotechnology cool? Start with that. How do you create a citizenry of a biotech future, right? What makes the American bioeconomy different than the Chinese bioeconomy? Is it simply where it's operating? Or is it about the terms and conditions? Who can practice what, where, for what purpose, right? We know biotechnology, we just heard, is about life, medicines, materials, fuels, right? But an American bioeconomy would have to be about liberty and the pursuit of happiness, too. And what does that mean? It means everybody has the option of learning to become a protagonist, an entrepreneur, a student, a participant of biotechnology, right? So we're talking about K through 12, as we'll hear later, and all the infrastructure for that. It's just at the Carnegie Library that's now an Apple store, strangely, in this town. But that was really important 100 years ago. It's a university for all people, right? So the idea of libraries, the BioBuilder Educational Foundation, the iGEM, the NSF program. So just want to acknowledge that. Then R&D infrastructure, bring it. How come it still takes me a week to build a gene? No offense, right? But what's up with that? And if you really think about the making and modeling and measuring capacities, we could really upgrade those. Why is it that I can only get an image of a cell with a cryo-EM microscope where I can see all the molecules, but I cook the sample, right? I want a camcorder for cellular metrology. using some physics I'll never understand. But if we gave the researchers at NIST and in the national labs a 10-year runway, they'd figure it out. And then I'd be able to see every molecule in a cell interacting with every other molecule on nanosecond frequencies. And then it's not going to be so complicated, right? So research infrastructure, entrepreneurship infrastructure. That one, I like quite a lot, and I like what's coming out of the commission on pilot scale. But let's just fast forward. It's not going to do us a lot of good if we unlock the innovation, we unlock the pilot scale manufacturing processes, and then we can't bring it to full scale manufacturing and actually serve the market. And so one of the things we think about is what we call downstream dollars. For every dollar you invest at pilot scale, biomanufacturing, how many dollars have to follow to get to full scale? And it's like somewhere between $10 and $100, right? So if we're putting $1 billion a year into pilot scale manufacturing domestically, we need somewhere between 20 and 100 billion to follow. Right? So how do we get that capital flow infrastructure and push and pull mechanisms, tax-free bonds at the state level or you name it? I just want to highlight, when we say infrastructure, it's across all layers, education, R&D, entrepreneurship, and translation to full scale, in addition to regulatory. But there's like a lot of good work to do there.
As you each sort of build out your own priority lists for the future of biotech, like who are the major stakeholders that have to have buy-in in order for this to work?
Yeah, it has to be Congress, right? We see with the work that we've done, Congress has to buy in, and it starts with, as we talked about earlier, everyone coming and telling them the importance of biotechnology and sharing the stories of what it can do for the communities across America, the jobs it can create. This is such an important area of opportunity for our country and a place that we should continue to lead. Congress needs to be bought into that, and we have champions that you've heard from today, and you will hear from throughout the rest of the program to work on that with us. But it starts with folks in this room and folks like you, industry, academics, to tell this story, to make it clear why this is such a critical area. We can't do it alone. It has to be, a unified approach and a unified message.
How about you, Patrick?
Great comments, and also just as a reminder, Drew, we'll get you a piece of DNA in 2 days, not 5 now. My next call will be to our marketing department for not getting the message out. We've built this incredible platform where essentially we can scale this thing beyond where we are today. And so to me, I heard the bioliteracy word earlier. To me, it's all about education. As many people aware and literate and quite frankly capable and competent of using the platform for good. And I think if we look at it today, there's probably about 500,000 labs approximately worldwide we could serve. There's hundreds of thousands of customers. It would be wonderful to see at a point in the future where there's orders of magnitude more people capable of using the platform for good.
We have just a few minutes left, so I just want to ask a final sort of question for all of you, which is, thinking really big, are there sectors for biomanufacturing and biotech that just aren't being discussed or explored, like space? I don't know. Are there if you think really big and big grand challenges?
Can I take that really quick? I think Abby and PJ at SCSP coined a turn of phrase a couple years ago. It's right on the money. Biology is a general purpose technology, right? One of the things I'm still surprised we're sleeping on is the Semiconductor Research Corporation's report for synthetic biology from 6 years ago now. And it's a 20-year roadmap for doing foundational engineering research to unlock biology as a GPT, a general purpose technology, and you could grow a computer, right? Now, that's technically impossible today, but it's physically imaginable. I remember talking about that with Commissioner Belcher 20 years ago when we talked together. The only people who are working on this one, so far as I can tell, are the Australians right now, right? But for the cost of reshoring one chip fab, you could unlock biology as a general purpose technology, and then you're growing things you'd never imagined were bioaccessible. The other thing I'd highlight is biotech today feels very much like 1975 computing to me. It's like we're going to get more of the industrial biotech, and we need it, and that's going to be great. But there are some qualitative changes right in front of us. I'll highlight just one. Biotech's becoming pervasive and personal. Biology that lives on our skin, that lives in our body, that's in our rooms. I bought, as a consumer, 3 GMOs last year. Off the web. Bioluminescent petunia, purple tomatoes, and a probiotic that deals with hangover stuff, which I haven't tried. the utility of the bioluminescent petunia is joy.
Right.
It changed how our children think about biotechnology. They think it's cool now. All right, so it's a very interesting time.
Do either of you want to add to that?
I think that's a very, very hard statement to follow through.
Yeah.
I think our wee challenge from a commercial standpoint is that we're a publicly traded company. Our vision has to be delivered upon. We see the community dreaming big, maybe not quite as big as Drew's imagining there. So our lens is a little bit more near-term focused. In every segment that we serve, I believe we're underachieving. And again, I'm desperately trying to stay at the healthcare realm. So much more we can do from a biological entity standpoint in improving human health, human outcomes.
Yes.
So if I keep that slightly nearer term lens on it, I think we're just getting started, to be honest. The true precision medicine dart from reading and writing nucleic acid and understanding the real fundamentals of disease, I think we're just getting going, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Final word to you.
Yeah, I mean, these two gentlemen said it amazingly well. We're just getting started and we have to unlock the dreams, right? It really is about letting our innovators in this country do what they do best. And so we've laid out a roadmap to get us started, but more work needs to come.
Thank you all so much. We're going to head off and get ready for the next panel. So thank you.
Thank you.